Good afternoon, DFLers. My name is Sondra Samuels, and thank you so much for being here today. And I got to tell you, there are no enemies in this room. We might have a different perspective, but we are all DFLers. And so thank you so much for being here. And Don's going to introduce himself, but he'll say more, but I just want to introduce you to a person who is a great neighbor. We've been on the north side for 24 years. We live right down the block. We have nenes. We have been devoted to them. We protect them, and they're devoted to him, and they protect him. I want to introduce you to a person who has been an honorable public servant for over 20 years, dignified and caring about this community, this city, this state. I want to introduce you to a person who is a wonderful father to 3 lovely ladies who are strong, powerful, and beautiful, and a wonderful son whom he raised on his own. And lastly, I want to introduce you to my best friend, my husband, my partner for over 25 years, the man that I love so much, Don Samuels.
My name is Don Samuels, and I'm running for Congress in Minnesota's 5th District. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank you all for being here today and for participating in this process, especially those who helped set up and run today's convention. Thank you all. Now, my life began in Kingston, Jamaica, the 3rd of 10 kids, born to a Pentecostal minister and a seamstress. I grew up in a poor part of the city, but my family valued education and music. I started playing piano when I was 15, and crazy enough, I had a #1 hit on the Jamaican Hit Parade by age 19. I was also an artist, so I migrated to study industrial design at the Pratt Institute in New York as an immigrant. I didn't qualify for grants or loans, so I worked full-time as I attended classes also full-time. My career as a toy designer and later head of research and development for companies like Hasbro, Play School, and Milton Bradley eventually brought me and my young son Andre to Minnesota. I was a single custodial parent at the time. One day I met a woman named Sondra Hollinger while volunteering at Pilgrim Baptist Church in St. Paul, right before she left to spend 2 years helping to change the world through service in the Peace Corps in Botswana, and later 2 more years in AmeriCorps. Despite seeing each other only once over those long 4 years, we became engaged. Those days were filled with letter writing and occasional long-distance calls and some very early versions of email, and we still smile when we hear, "You've got mail." We settled in North Minneapolis, where we raised 3 girls to adulthood. Our home in North Minneapolis continued a commitment I made in college to always live in the most challenged part of any city I lived in, even though we could afford to live elsewhere. The first week in our new home, a bullet shattered the window in our expected baby's room. For some, it might have been a sign to leave. For us, it was a sign to organize. With our neighbors, we fought to ensure that our city had the fair and sufficient public safety resources to combat the violence devastating our communities. And that brings us to today. I entered this race in March because I believe we're in a fight against the breakdown of our political system. Announcing well after the February 1st caucus, I didn't initially intend to participate in the convention process, but many supporters have asked us to consider attending today. So I'm here to give voice to their concerns about our district, our country, and our party. Yes. Sondra and I are longtime, lifelong Democrats. What does that mean? It means, like you and like my opponent, I believe that health care is a human right. I believe that women have the right to make their own health care decisions. I believe that climate crisis is existential and we must take action. I believe that we must protect everyone's sacred right to vote. I believe that everyone should have access to high-quality education that begets opportunity. And I believe that all people deserve to be treated with dignity and equality. In fact, I am a Democrat because I believe that this is the party of the people. That's right. Democrats are the party of the people. And the party of the public. Talking about public health, public transportation, public education, public parks, public safety, and public service. We Democrats believe that these shouldn't just be reserved for those with wealth and privilege, but instead that in a society as productive and rich as ours, everybody should have the opportunity to build something better for themselves and their loved ones. But today, Democrats, our party is called on to be something more than that. Our party represents the last best hope of preserving our democracy from the steady encroaching threats of extremism and autocracy. And as so we have a special burden placed on us today, we must evaluate our leaders critically at this time and ask whether their approach represents the best way forward. And though we agree on many things, this is where the contrast between me and my opponent is the clearest. I believe that we must seek to build our party and find common cause with people who largely share our values and entirely share our commitment to democracy. A party that seeks to build broad support is essential if we believe legislative majorities are important, and they are. Look no further than 2013 and 2014, here in Minnesota, when we had majorities in the House, Senate, and passed marriage equality, all-day kindergarten, and the first early learning childhood scholarships, and so much more for Governor Dayton to sign. That type of progress requires teamwork. It requires putting common interests in front, not our personal interest. Currently, we have a tight majorities in Washington, D.C. Yet, instead of displaying the type of leadership that the moment calls for, your member of Congress was the only one of 6 Democrats, to vote against President Biden's signature infrastructure bill. She was one of only 3 Democrats, joining every Republican to vote against additional funding to secure the Capitol after January 6th insurrection attempt. She was one of 2 Democrats to vote against implementing Russian oil sanctions. And she was one of 4 Democrats to vote against a proposal to seize the assets of Russian oligarchs and war profiteers. Finally, she was one of only 2 Democrats to have voted against all of those provisions. On some of the most consequential matters of the Biden presidency, our member is more likely to have her name read with those of Gates, Green, and Cawthorn than she is to have it read with Phillips, Craig, and McCollum. It is worth pointing out that by voting no, she isn't hurting the GOP. She's not hurting Manchin and Kristen Sinema. Instead, she's giving cover to Republican opposition at the expense of the President Biden. Her colleagues in tough races across the country and her colleagues in Minnesota delegation none of which have endorsed her election. The situation we find ourselves in today is dire, as any I have seen in my life, which has largely been marked by decades of social progress and the expansion of human rights. My fellow Democrats, we are being called to hold the line on that progress and defend against the attack of our democracy and to answer that call. Together we will hold that line for the generations who faced down dogs and clubs and they marched for voting rights. Together, Democrats, we will hold the line. Thank you.